the Alt Asset Allocation Podcast, exploring alternative investment opportunities available to the everyday investor. Here's your host, Ben Lakoff.
Hello and welcome to the Alt Asset Allocation Podcast. Today's interview is with DeFi Ted, or TED. DAOs are all the rage right now, Decentralized Autonomous Organizations. We've talked about these a few times on the podcast before, but Ted was one of the founding core members behind ParagonsDAO. This launched at the end of January, and it's pretty darn cool. In this episode, we cover a lot about Ted being anonymous in the space, some of the difficulties and intricacies of operating as a pseudonymous or anonymous person. Then we go into a lot of detail on ParagonsDAO, the DAO itself, building it from scratch. Parallel NFTs, these are the NFTs, the assets that ParagonsDAO owns a lot of. Misconceptions about being in Web3. There's this misconception that they're all devs or traders and nothing else. Shocker, if you're, or spoiler, if you are interested in joining the space, there's always teams looking for intelligent, passionate people to join their projects, that's for sure. We also talk about the collaborative versus competitive nature of Web3 and just overall building in the space. There's a lot going on. I know I say that a lot, but Ted really spends a lot of time in these areas, and I'm delighted to share his insight here. All right, before you listen, please don't forget to like or subscribe to the podcast. Even better, leave a review. If you're watching this on YouTube, please subscribe to the channel or give it a thumbs up. This really helps people find it. And as I've told you before, I'm going to restart this thing in 2022. So excited to get more traction on the podcast, that's for sure. All right, what ParagonsDAO and Parallel NFTs are doing in this space are absolutely incredible. And this is just one little piece, but please enjoy this conversation with DeFi Ted. Ted, welcome to the Alt Asset Allocation Podcast. Excited to have you here today. Thanks for jumping on.
Oh, thanks for having me, Ben.
Yeah, it's been a long time coming, man. I'm super excited to sit down. And these are the conversations we've had a number of times, but being able to record this and share it with our audience, I think it will be really good. You're deep in the community. We're going to go over a lot. But before we get there, let's start off just with a little background, who you are, how you got into crypto, and maybe how you came up with the pseudonym DeFi Ted.
Sure. Okay. So, the pseudonym was actually really easy. It was in 2019. End of 2019, I changed over to DeFi Ted. And I wanted something that represented who I was as a person, but maybe didn't get to be as like my individual. And I've always been very outspoken, very direct. Some people say I lead with my chin, which means I'm happy to lead with my jaw, which means I'm happy to kind of, get one or two knocked on there. and that's just and that's always been my personality as I run to the fire, but I've always done it with a very smart ass mentality, and Ted kind of fit who I was at that time, and I'd kind of like found it. COVID wasn't around yet, but my daughter had just been born. She was very premature. She was about 10 weeks premature, so we were spending a lot of time in hospital. And I was reflecting on my time at hospital around creating this pseudonym. I was actually in the middle of redoing all my crypto stuff because I wanted to really spend more time in that space. I was very disillusioned from my current employment. And I'd already been in crypto for 2 years at that point, but I just hadn't really thrown myself into it. So I was going through this change process and it was DeFi Ted. So I originally had Ted and I was like, well, what can I make with Ted? And I actually wanted to have the word as one word being DeFi Ted, so it kind of spelt defeated, because that's how I kind of felt at the bottom of 2000.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
And I wanted like that double kind of meaning, that double entendre, the DeFi Ted, but I'm also defeated, right? And it didn't really work out to stay that way because 2020 was, we had our DeFi summer. I'd been early to a lot of things there, and we went off and I was able to continue to put actions behind this, anon persona and grow DeFi Ted.
Fascinating. Yeah. How'd you, so you got into crypto in 2017. Walk me through kind of the journey there.
Yeah, easy. I had a friend of mine that was on Facebook ranting and raving about digital currencies. ICOs were starting to really take off, but it's still very early. So it was still before so we're talking about the start of 2017. So well before the boom at the end of that year. So my first foray in was I participated in a thing called Komodo, which was, I think, Bitcoin Dark maybe at the time. And it was being, they were doing an ICO for their new platforms, and I had a friend tell me all this stuff. I had no idea what he was talking about at the time, and I said, sure, I'll throw some money into this. And I made a bit of money from this ICO, and I started reading more about Bitcoin. I wasn't really on Ethereum back then. I'd spent a lot of time with this because I'd obviously invested in this ICO, so I was a biased bag holder to being early, and I thought this was going to change the world. But then once all the crash happened at the end of 2017, I was in this situation where, okay, there's a lot less noise now. There's a lot less kind of people throwing stuff in your face all the time where maybe you're not getting the real information. And it was actually that time afterwards, maybe about 6 months, middle of 2018, did I start really, I was able to start kind of getting through the weeds a little bit and reading some really valuable information and starting to learn properly. And that was probably my best time, middle of 2018 to the end of 2019 in crypto, just for learning. There was so little noise. Everything that came out was pretty much alpha. And you were able to actually take in real and new development without all of the shilling and the advertising and all the money grabbing going on that was happening during that 2017 period.
Right. Yeah, that's incredible. 2018 also was one of those years of exponential growth for me, 2018, 2019 as well. And I think as soon as a lot of the hype and the mania goes away from like the markets, you can actually get some real work done, which is important. I wanted to talk to you. I mean, being anon or pseudonymous in the space is pretty, like, if you're kind of a small player, it's probably not that difficult, but like you being one of these core team members a number of times, how is that, like, separating, having this whole separate life online in the crypto sphere as DeFi Ted, and then your normal life as whoever you are in IR, the meat space? Talk to me a little bit about that, because I think that's infinitely fascinating.
Yeah. Yeah, so my previous role was always relationships. So for those that are listening, I'm not a developer. I don't code. That is not my background. My background has always been relationships and process management. So taking financial processes and refining those, or operational processes. And the thing that clicked with me was the whole, how you incentivize behaviors with smart contracts to get the right economic outcome each time for each player, right? That to me, everything kind of clicked for me when that happened. So it wasn't too much that I had to. My biggest challenge really is not so much going from a meat space job and applying skills into this role. I found that actually quite easy. For most people, they think that it's hard. I think that you just need to immerse yourself first, and then the skills will present themselves to you of what's relevant to you and within the project you're a part of. But it was the diving in allowed me to kind of spend this time at home on my computer, and then have this other life in the real world where I can just step away and no one knows, right? And I just kind of, like, my family even go, like, what do you do? I'm just like, I play with magical internet beings. Like it's because it's so hard to explain. I've explained it to people. I've tried to explain it to people, and I just come back with saying, look, I just do smart contract development, because that is the easiest way to put it. Yeah. But there is so much more to it than that. Like, we're building communities. We're actually building business relationships into DAO here. So a lot of people just align this to like deving and coding, but and unfortunately for most of us that are in this space, we kind of have that as our fallback when we say, what do we do? Because sometimes that's just the easiest thing to kind of explain, right? But the truth is we need so much more in this space. We need business development. We need operational managers. We actually need people from HR backgrounds, right? We need content producers, content writers, educators. But the people that we need the most are the people kind of like me a little bit in regards to, we got plenty of like introverted autist smart contract devs, and they are awesome. I work with them all the time. But what I don't run into very often is someone that's working on a team that's like me, who's completely extroverted the other way, won't shut up, can talk with a mouthful of marbles underwater, but also has a passion and desire to want to keep talking about those things, which means you bring along those other types along for the ride with you. So, I employ anyone that's in a kind of a business development or in like relationship management, especially, to come and play your hand, or there is a skill that will be transferable from your real world to crypto. I think so many people just look at it at the coding point of view, but that is the easiest way to kind of explain what you do.
Oh yeah, coding or trading, right? The people just assume it's one or the other, and the reality is, yeah.
I don't like to use trading because people can see my address and then they know that's not true.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, fair. Well, I mean, that's, because everybody just uses one address for everything,
Exactly. No one would ever have multiple ETH addresses.
No, it would make zero sense. I've run into you it's actually like a relatively small space, obviously with Cover back in the day, but then more recently with ParagonsDAO. Why don't you give me like the TLDR on what ParagonsDAO is and why it's important, or how do you explain it to newbies, I guess?
Well, I mean, so ParagonsDAO, and we've been going through this explanation process, even with the Parallel group, who are they're the assets that we hold that back this treasury. So Paragon started out as being just a kind of like a club, I would say. Like, we're just enthusiasts of Parallel. Like, a lot of people think that we're some sort of big bad wolf of a economic structure coming to suck the life out of metaverse games, when that's completely not the truth. I mean, we want Parallel and the trading card games to go as far as it possibly can, because that's how we all came together, was we really enjoyed and like what these guys are doing in the game, right? And think that they're going to make it work. We're all super pumped to be wanting to play this. But the thing is that, yes, a lot of us had some pretty high net worth assets from that game because of our love of it. And obviously, a lot of us here in Paragons to start off with are DeFi kind of either builders or traders. So obviously, they're a lot more than that, but they're either one of those two things. And they've had some wins out of that. So we've been able to roll a lot of those returns into this game, and it's allowed. I personally think it's allowed maybe a little bit more exposure to what Parallel is doing, and maybe focus on their NFTs specifically, which can only be good for those holders that want to hold their NFTs. But Paragons wants to take what we've done with the onboarding process and create a community environment that houses professional players, has a place for guilds and professional players to kind of connect with each other, and is somewhere to foster relationships and discussion around all things to do with those games. So it could, at this stage, it's Parallel, and there'll be other games in the future as well that are play to earn. But the idea is that we wanted to give a place that would cater for people that wanted to be a play to earn player, right? And the first liking of that we had was poker. So poker was one of the very first play to earn card games. It was a game that went online. It got made famous by a few massive tournaments, and everyone wanted to be a Texas Hold'em player. The problem that happened there is that people did want to bankroll themselves and start to be a career player because everyone thought they were amazing. But what happened is those that actually did make it found that they became unbanked because there was concerns with some of the platforms they were using around money laundering and some other things. So to me, you can almost see like a clear line as to how this is going to play out, because they're already looking to try and clamp down on crypto usage, especially in the US. We just saw Hayden Adams get unbanked by JP Morgan Chase in regards to just being a crypto founder.
Terrifying.
So yeah, 100%. So we wanted to make sure that not only did we have this place where they could thrive from their skill and growing that and having basically a group of people, people that are all aligned in the same thought process to come and share that, but also a place that they could have to make sure that they could hold and grow that wealth that they create. And that's by having things like, just simple things like an access to be able to deposit funds to a savings account through Paragons, to be able to have, an APY just to earn from your earnings today. And that could be on Prime tokens in the future, where you don't want to sell your Prime tokens. We should be able to have a vault that allows you to earn yield on that, but also be able to borrow against your assets and do all the other things that, well, anyone trading with that real assets in the real world would get to do, right? And that's be able to take loans against them, not have to sell them, access liquidity to continue to grow yourself, right? So these are the tools that we want to help unpack for these guys, so they can continue to grow themselves, grow their bankroll, and grow, and basically be in charge of their own future.
Yeah, that's really, really powerful. Well, let's talk briefly about Parallel before we kind of dive in a little bit more about ParagonsDAO. So Parallel, I think I got obsessed with this after DeFi Dad got obsessed with it, and his obsession kind of carried over to me. And
that's my fault.
Yeah,
my fault.
yeah, exactly. Hook somebody who hooks somebody else, and I'm just yelling about it constantly. But what kind of drew you to the Parallel ecosystem? What makes that ecosystem so special, and what they're working on?
So to me, their ecosystem is special for, okay, so I want to start with the first reason. And the first reason that I really enjoyed this was the art, right? So when I first started looking at Parallel, it was February last year. I think they just released their first lot of PS15 cards. I wasn't involved in that initial round or initial drop, but a lot of people had them. And they were going relatively cheap for what they were at the time. No one really knew. So I bought my first few cards purely based off the art, and that got me into kind of okay, when they started talking about the game and stuff, I'm going, okay, what is this really about? So I started to do a little bit more digging from literally from that point, and it turns out that these guys have been building this out for the last year and a bit before this. The builders that are involved from the card game itself are ex-Magic the Gathering and Hearthstone players, and had some involvement with those teams in the past. So I felt like we were getting game makers who were building a game, bringing it to DeFi or bringing it to NFT, bringing it to crypto. And I was super bullish on that, because I've just spent the last 6 months at Cap Table talking to smart contract developers, learning how to make computer games. And I'm like, this just isn't the right way to do it, right? Like I appreciate you guys have all the smart contract skill in the world, but building out a trading card game or some sort of computer game, that's a skill in itself. I mean, that's an industry that's already been around for the last 20 plus years. And there are definitely way more failures than there are successes. So, it's a really hard thing to do. So we thought that when I thought about looking at the game itself, that was a big tick for me. The next big tick for me was the fact that they had Chad Hurley from the YouTube founder on their cap table, who was helping provide a lot of the cinematics through his media business. And if you've ever listened to this guy on Twitter, and I think the guy's he's a serious he is a Chad. And he's very direct, and I like the way that he talks. He's a no bullshit kind of guy, and he's very, very bullish on this group as well. And then we didn't know too much about the mechanics of it, so the crypto side of it wasn't the thing for us. We knew that would be good. It was the fact that, for me, it was the fact that it was the gameplay, right? That's where their focus was, and that's where their skills were. And then they had Carlos, who is their crypto the kind of guy there, basically. It does all the mechanics and the tokenomics. And then we've just had the PP release. And I think we've been very justified in now pursuing this game, because not only have they created what I consider now to be the premier trading card game that will be released, but they've also got a standard for how play to earn should actually work. I mean, this prime proposal and how their play to earn mechanics work is so far deeper than anything anyone has ever done before. And this isn't to annoy other people, but this is like a real game with real mechanics versus a click farm scenario like Axie, right? Now, I love Axie. I've got Axies. My daughter and I play Axie. SLP can be a bit expensive, but the fact of the matter is, it's not as enjoyable as it used to be, and there's nowhere near the returns in it, and that's because it's been very much broken down to clicking, and they definitely need to fix up those mechanics. And to me, that's an example of a game that is a good game but was designed by crypto, right? So the trading card game side of it, I'm looking forward to. Now, I've had a very small set of my own cards here, and I've tried to play it on my desk with Parallel, just to kind of learn the mechanics that they've been coming out. And it does seem very busy to do on a desk. I will say that. So I am very much looking forward to the digital version. Yeah, it is, because
I haven't seen the physical ones. I bet that's fun. Well, difficult sounds like it.
Yeah. Well, I think they need to be honest with you, I think the feedback so far is if they had a board, right, it'd be easy to do all the working out of like what card is so like if you're a certain Parallel, like if you're Katara, you've just got a lot of cards because you do a lot of upgrades, right? So you've always got to remember what card you use to upgrade what thing. So having a board to kind of manage that would probably make a lot of sense. So I think they're looking at that. But yeah, I mean, Parallel to us had the right combination of real world gamers with real crypto heads trying to bring something to the space that made sense, not just trying to smash a square peg in a round hole.
Yeah, no, that makes sense. For the listeners, like Prime proposal, this is being recorded late January and the Prime proposal just came out. But what exactly does this say? I mean, they were two massive documents, a bit of hoping that you break it down. I've read a couple Twitter threads on it, but like what's the high level? What is this? Why is it important for the ecosystem? Yeah, what does it mean?
So the Prime proposal is basically a forest that's been put into paper, right? It's quite thick. But for those that haven't read the whole thing, the Prime proposal breaks down the usage of all the assets within the space. So one of the things that I'm very impressed with is that if you're a holder of a Parallel card, then you've been included in the rewarding process for retrospective rewards for being a Parallel community member. So there's a percentage of tokens that are going out for the Prime tokens that are going out to everyone. The other thing is that they've been able to put a price on certain things. So they've been able to, if depending on what type of collector you are, there's a way for you to earn, which is what I love. So if you're a type of collector that just likes to earn sets, right? They're like, well, if you get a playing card set, that's still like an earning asset, right? They call them paraset. If you've got, if you're particularly like, high net worth stuff and you'd rather have a one of one, all of those are what they call, most of those assets have been considered what they call cornerstone assets. And they're able to earn more the fees that are associated by trading Prime or doing anything to do with the Prime token or any token within Parallel or what they call Echelon. So the one thing I will break down is that there's two things. There's Echelon, which is the owner of Prime token, like they run the Prime token in the Prime ecosystem. And then within that ecosystem is Parallel. So Prime will actually be a governance token of multiple ecosystems.
Man, it's so cool. And this just fits. I mean, listeners have seen the evolution of like, yeah, we get excited about tokenization and real ownership with NFTs, but what a cool convergence of the two. And hopefully this like actually fun game that people love and care about as well. And it's not just, literally play to earn. You're playing only to earn these things as opposed to like actually enjoying it. So I'm curious, with like ParagonsDAO owning a lot of these different assets, a question that has presumably come up is, now with this Prime proposal, knowing that there is a token involved, how is that token accumulated by ParagonsDAO? How does that work?
So the idea around what we did with the assets, so the initial assets in there before our bonding event were what we considered, high net worth assets that were unattainable by the average person. Yeah. So the reason why we wanted to tokenize those was we wanted to give an opportunity for anyone to hold exposure to them. That was our first and foremost. There was a lot of people in the parallel chat that were like, "I'll never earn a masterpiece," and to be honest, it was that kind of downturn in their sentiment. That was a big reason for us wanting to kind of put this together. It was like, well, maybe there's a way we can give people access to this, right? And access to the rewards that are built into that. And it's obviously flourished into a lot more than that. But like the assets that we have, there's two reasons for them. One is they're going to either have some sort of reward mechanic that we will then earn the rewards on. So if you think about like kind of prime keys, catalyst drives, these kind of prime assets are all going to earn prime token, right? And then the masterpieces earn 1/5 of the 5% royalty from the secondary marketplaces, which is all built in for us to receive. So any of those masterpieces, that subsequent card, anytime it's sold, we receive a return on that. So it was really important to get those, large reward returning assets or yield generating assets to be able to hold them in the treasury, because that's growth for us. The reason why we went after the parasets was obviously there was an inkling that we were going to receive Prime, or there was going to be something around parasets. So we specifically wanted to bond a bunch of those. So we've now got 150 parasets, which is by far and large the biggest collection that there is. And what we're going to do with these is that we're not going to just hold them and take them from the market and not let anyone hold it just for a value accrual. I think that's probably the very short-sighted way that people see that we're doing something. Oh, you're just going to retain it. You're going to have the lower supply cards and force their prices up and make money that way. I mean, that is that's a very blinkers on look. And to be honest, from the outside looking in, that's maybe what it does look like. But the truth is that's not, that can't be further from the truth. What we'll be doing is we've got a number of partners we're working to ensure that we can provide an environment that's a better trading experience for those users. So, one of the things that we've asked Parallel is or Echelon is where they see their layer 2 solution. And they can't give us an answer at the moment. And that's fine, because they probably have so many other things that they're working on that layer 2 might not be in their best interest right now, especially if the digital gameplay is not to be until the end of the year. So what can we do to help that out? Well, in the interim for the rest of the year, we can take all of our liquidity in cards and turn them into ERC20s, create a new Uniswap pool, like an LP, and send them to an L2, where the user can now have a fast, cheap trading experience. And the only ETH gas cost that they'll suffer is when they unwrap it back on L1. And what that allows then the user to do is actually interact with the Parallel ecosystem before it's launched, without Parallel having to overstretch themselves and add an L2 capability just for that, just for their users in this instance before gameplay. So, that's just one example of how we're using those liquidity assets to actually give better experiences to the whole community.
Yeah, that's pretty sweet. You've mentioned the card bonding. This was quite innovative. I believe one of the first of its kinds. How did this work? What was in the background? What was the intention? What were the mechanics? Walk us through a little bit of that and kind of the idea behind it.
Sure. So the bonding for the NFTs, I think there's definitely been other bonding in the past for NFTs, but I think there've been for 721s that are of a financial nature. So like an NFT that represents, $1 gold or something, on a very small scale. But this type of bonding event was absolutely a first of its kind. The process that we took was more around how do we align our community with what we're trying to do, right? With the people that we want in the community. The best way to do that was at a fixed price rate. So everything that we did was fixed price. And I think that's, bonds are generally fixed price. They're generally a fixed price product. And, Olympus has been able to do some really cool stuff with a decaying premium rate and so forth to incentivize bonders. So we wanted to keep it very simple. A lot of people call it innovative, but it was actually just a very simple process. So all we did was we wanted to bond, X amount of each NFT, and we wanted to give a fair price for that in return for PDT that was vested. So PDT was placed at 34 cents fixed because we wanted to offer that at the same price that all investors were at. And then we fixed a floor price, right? And added a percentage to it for gas for each asset. And then we converted that to a price in PDT. And what we were expecting would be that the prices during that bonding event would fluctuate on the floors. But there would, even if the floor went up, we always thought people would probably want to buy that and bring that and bond that because there was potentially still more upside in the PDT. And with the PP or the prime proposal yet to drop, that they would want that upside to access to those tokens. So what really happened in the end was we sold them out in 2 hours, which was great. And we saw a lot of people buy those from OpenSea and deposit them to our contracts. So one of the things I was very confident in by this process would be, so we were trying to find a buying process, right, for all these assets. And the very first thing was the team had come up with a committee, which I wasn't part of since I'm doing the lead contributor stuff. And they would make a decision based on what they're going to buy and how they're going to buy it, what price, and all that type of stuff. So we had a level of transparency, but not to the point where we could communicate that to the community. And that to me was a thorn in my side because I thought, well, we need to be able to do this in a way that has that transparency.
Yeah, I think that the like FOMO was real, right? Like these things sold out in 2 hours, like tripled the price of some of these NFT assets. It was pretty spectacular, really.
It went really smoothly, and the behavior side of things was exactly how we had what some of us had actually mentioned and said, hey, this is just going to turn the market into our buying power, right? Rather than having to go and compete against the market. And everyone was like, well, everyone's going to know what price we're looking at. I'm like, that doesn't matter, right? It doesn't matter. We're the biggest dog now in the yard. So why don't we be transparent? This is what we want to buy. This is how many we want to buy them for. This is the amount of PDT, and this is the cost, right? And at some point, if that's a fixed price, yeah, and the market will move around it, and someone will want to come and arb that price. At some point, the market will say, no, it's better to be picking it up from OpenSea, bonding it to Paragons and taking the PDT. And that's exactly the behavior we wanted, right? We wanted those arbitrary guys to come in, arb the market for us from the marketplaces, yeah, and deposit those NFTs with us. So we instantly, instead of having to compete against this whole market, we let them become our buyers.
Yeah, that makes sense. But I guess the flip side of that is a Constitution DAO type situation that because it is so transparent, you know exactly what the other person is able to bid and what their budget is, and you can just outbid them because you can see it.
I agree. I absolutely agree. I think the difference in this instance, though, is that both players are transparent. So we're transparent, but so is the player that's on the other side because we're all based on blockchain. So everyone's kind of from a transparent point of view can see, where the alpha is in that scenario. You're not going to probably bond a card that you're going to lose 20% on just to bond, and then you might not see 20% upside in PDT either, right? And go, well, I might have to wait too long. But at some point, the markets will fluctuate where that bond becomes attractive, and that's the point of kind of what we're doing. So we leave that level of transparency so that those that are playing in the same space can just take advantage of it when it comes available. So, but yeah, I do agree with you. Like in that regard, where Ken Griffin was able to see exactly how much money Constitution DAO had, and then
Yeah.
just and then just roll them, steamroll them.
Just the villain. This is crazy.
Yeah, so I absolutely agree with that. So in that scenario, yeah, I definitely think there needs to be some sort of like, if you could get like a party DAO or something like that is on like a ZK where you can't see the balances, would be amazing.
Yeah. You guys, the founding community of ParagonsDAO is pretty gigantic. I mean, just looking at the list, it's Paradigm, Framework, tons and tons of investors and kind of angels from the space, myself included, full disclosure, obviously a fan. Part of this is, the token allocation was split amongst these early contributors, founders, and then the available for the community. Talk to me about using vesting capsules, charge particles with the founders tokens, and what kind of interested you with this and what you're doing with them.
The vesting capsules, I've been playing around with your platform for a little bit of time, and another one. So I think you and I have spoken in the past. There's another group, Soul Finance, who also do these vesting vouchers, which is actually they actually are a different product to what you guys offer. And we were having this chat, and the vesting capsule, I really like the idea of, because one of the things I think that is really hard in this space at the moment, without kind of like a rage quit function or anything, if you haven't got like a Moloch DAO set up, or at least something that Amin has created. I know he does a lot of porn, but the guy's a genius when it comes to DAO stuff. He honestly is. So you should always not pass judgment, just listen to what people do.
Oh yeah,
he's as smart as hell. But what I wanted to do, I didn't want to have that. I wanted people to still be self-sovereign, right, in their ownership. The idea is to try and make this as decentralized as we possibly can, as early as we can. The reason why we wanted to do it this way was so that people could be not fungible in their vesting schedules, but have the ability to transfer them or leave if they want it, right? So for the founders, we've got 16 founders across 18 different masterpieces. So 2 of our founders have 2 masterpieces that they've donated or contributed to the DAO. And then there's a number of these that have got groups inside of them, right? So we've got the RC, the DAO, which is the founder, but there's like a group of 20 of those guys that put in this masterpiece as well to be a founder. So I needed something that was transferable. So a contract wasn't going to work. And I needed something that could then have, just have things come and go from it, right? But it's still a founder identified asset. And that's where these capsules came in. So what we've done is we've created a ParagonsDAO founders capsule for vesting. And what that is it's a lovely piece of artwork created by Dave Schick, who's one of the, he's probably the best fan art guy I've seen come out of Parallel. So he's not one of their artists, he's a fan artist, but he could absolutely be on their team. And he's done like a special NFT for us, for our founders and core team members. He will get the first one though as a thank you. He has been paid for that service, but he will get the first one as a thank you because it is his art. So we would like him to own his own piece. And we'll give one of these to every founder. Now these are going to contain, firstly, their vesting schedules, and then any other. It allows us to do some other things. So the vesting schedules we have are created as an 1155 through Soul Finance. And they allow us to vest the PDT token to our founders over that 2-year linear schedule. So they don't have access to those tokens until they're vested linearly, so they can claim as they come per block, but it allows that locking mechanism. Now, because it's an ERC 1155 and everything's governed by the same vesting schedule, it also allows them the flexibility to sell that. So they could sell or transfer that vesting schedule to someone. And everyone that receives, if they've got 100,000 tokens that are vested and they want to send 40,000 to someone because that's their share, that person, when they receive that 40,000 in that ERC 1155, is still governed by the same vesting schedule that the other 60,000 is on. Nothing changes. So it allows you to kind of move those around, but keep them vested and keep them out of the market, as you mentioned by the tokenomics. But the other thing is that then just becomes another token contract that we can call when we're trying to align returns, right? And for governance. So because those tokens are technically held in the contract held by the user's wallet, it allows us to add those strategies, the strategy to look at those contracts for ownership of tokens into Snapshot, and it gives founders and core team members their full weight of voting, just like anyone else has at the moment. So it allowed that fairness to shore up, but it also allowed us to then have a vessel that we can continue to send returns to as well based off their weight. So when we start having the returns, when we start having the yield returns built in, we'll be able to involve the vested tokens as well in that process to earn the passive returns as well. So I think the combination of the capsule itself will almost be like its own little wallet for our founders, and everything will go into that, including other tokens and anything that comes from our treasury. But it also gives a point of reference where anyone can see what our founders are doing individually. So you can see all 15 individual founder vessels, and anyone can watch what happens within those.
Yeah, and I think that's what's, I mean, this is the open, transparent nature of all of this, but I really get excited about the change of initial tokenomics, having these shares, these founder tokens in custody of their rightful owners, undumpable, but able to be staked and earn rewards or have a say in voting and governance, which I think is really, really important and kind of changes the way that people design tokenomics from the beginning, knowing that the founders actually have a say in their own protocol, which I think is a very, very, very important thing. And then in terms of like ParagonsDAO overall, I guess what's like the super secret master plan, big vision? Where do you want to take this thing?
The super secret master plan. Well, if I told you, man, I would have to tell you. But I want to take this. I think so. A lot of people have kind of said like, how do you define what success is? I think it's probably the best thing it's probably the best answer for this. And for me, success is, and I mentioned this in our Discord not long ago to someone, is going to be different to my markers for success are going to be very different to most other people. And that's because obviously I've been building this from the ground up. But my markers of success is going to be when we sign our first pro player, right? When we hit our first 100,000 in members, when we have a distribution higher than 10,000 holders. None of these are financial markers, right? These are KPIs that are outside of that. How many partners are we working with in the space? How much fee sharing do we have going on? These are things that are important to me because I feel like these are the things that if you take care of, the others take care of themselves. So what I don't focus on is the price of the token and things that I don't focus on the things that will directly correlate the return in that price. What I focus on is the things that have a longer standing or a longer impact on the value added. So value adds come from more people being a part of it. Value adds come from, being a very inclusive and sharing community. And I think the sharing part is the bit that a lot of people miss. So many people go out and build their own protocols or fork their own or whatever it is. They don't say I can make it myself. Yeah. And that's fine. That's a zero sum. That's you seeing it as, well, we can't use that because we've got to do it ourselves. Otherwise we don't get the fee. But it's like, what's wrong with knocking on their door and saying, well, why don't we share the fee? If I can give you X amount of volume, why can't I get something in return? That's how it works in the real world. Right. So and we're already deep down the road with a number of places where we're talking fee sharing. So I hope to maybe show how that can work more often in this space. And these are some of the behaviors that we would like to change in the space is showing more collaboration between protocols at a fee level. One of the things I think that we can go back on is that these mergers don't work very well. Someone gets like gets wrecked, right?
Right.
So it's like, well, why merge treasuries and so forth? Why not just merge the product and both take a cut of the fee? That way you're both incentivized to push volume, right? You both incentivized to push the right thing. When you're already holding the token, you just feel rich already.
Yeah, 100%. And I think you're very much focused on people and building, but this point about collaboration versus competition, I think is very, very important. What kind of driving forward that thought within the space? What can the average person do to kind of ensure they're thinking more collaboration versus competition, or kind of spreading that thought to more and more people?
So I think, well, I actually think the first point of call when thinking of collaboration is when you're thinking about designing something, think about designing it with tools that already exist. Don't think about how I'm going to build it, right? So if your first process is, so the way I picture Paragons is, like I think I've told you this before, is that, we're like the master Lego builders from the Lego movie, right? Where we can just smash everything together and make new stuff. Well, all those pieces of Lego are the pieces of the protocols that we're using, right? And we'd rather do it that way than go and build the Lego itself. Yeah. By having that first approach, what that makes us think of is, well, where is the user volume for us? Like, where is the real products? Yeah. For us. Yeah. And then what do we need to build that product? And their first point of view is, well, what exists already today that we can work with, right? That we can just build on top of. That makes so much more sense. And then the moment we identify that, we reach out to those people and say, hey, we think we can do this. These are the things that we would like to do. This is where we feel like it can go from a volume perspective. These are the percentages of fees that are being done. This is what we think will increase. What if we can actually get that to happen and try and 10x that? A fee sharing model would probably be beneficial than trying to swap tokens.
Yeah, no, that totally makes, yeah.
So I've always been a big proponent of applying the KPI or the return to the KPI or the outcome that you need, not just one that is in like low hanging fruit.
Yeah, no, I love that.
Like TVL is low hanging fruit. I'm sorry,
yeah.
Anyone can just put money in and it's TVL, right? That's low hanging fruit. But say no, I want increase upon increase in my volumes, right? That requires fucking work.
Yeah, and real use, right? Which is still lacking in a lot of these protocols out there. That's for sure. Well, Ted, this has been a very, very interesting conversation. We've covered a lot. I mean, what kind of last thoughts do you want to leave the listeners with, or where can they find out more about you or Paragons? Where would you want to send them?
Well, you could go to my Twitter, which is at DeFi_Ted. I've got a pinned message there about a lot of the ethos that I just spoke about earlier, which was about a meritocracy and what crypto is. So I implore anyone to read that. I wrote that over a year ago and pinned that. Still there. I still very much believe in that. So if you're thinking that I want to be in this space or I can't break in, then you need to rethink your mindset and go and just start asking questions. Become anonymous, right? Feel like that you can make mistakes and not feel retribution. I think that's probably one of the best things about being a non and learning in the space. Most people are too afraid to put their hand up because they don't want to be wrong, right? Well, guess what? You're not using your face anymore. What do you got to lose? So if you ask questions, be prepared to be told that you're wrong and this is the right answer. And then you can learn and come along for the ride with the rest of us. But you need to break down that barrier. Anonymity at least allows you that freedom of not being judged and kind of recourse free in regards to your level of understanding or not.
Absolutely. And I love that pinned post, and I'll definitely link it. It's very, very important. And yeah, thanks for sharing that for sure.
No problem, Ben. And appreciate you having me on.
Of course. Ted, we appreciate all that you do. You're doing some amazing stuff in the space, and certainly ParagonsDAO is just getting warmed up with the crazy, innovative, cool stuff that is coming down the pipeline. So really appreciate it, brother.
Oh no, happy to be here, mate. Happy to be here.
All right, there you go. First off, thank you very much for listening all the way through. I hope you got a lot of value out of that conversation. As always, you can find show notes, links, and more at altassetallocation.com. Please share this with anyone you think might be interested and derive any value from this conversation. And as always, you can reach out to me for any feedback or questions. Please give the video a like, or even better, subscribe on YouTube or your podcast player of choice. This really helps others find the podcast or the video as well. Thanks a lot. Hope everybody has a fantastic day and stay safe out there and invest wisely. Cheers. 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 Cheers.